What if you could lead more effectively and go home on time? Welcome to the Lightbulb. I'm Zoe Thompson, leadership and performance coach, and each week I bring you 3 practical insights from my work helping impact-driven leaders transform from reactive to intentional leadership so they can finish work on time and take guilt-free time off, creating success that feels as good as it looks. Let's jump in. Welcome back. Episode 31 and the light bulbs this week. These are corkers. Does anybody use that word anymore? But they are corkers. And it was actually quite tough picking out which 3 to focus in on this week because it's been a really good week with some really powerful calls with clients. And sometimes it just goes like that. You get those sessions where you can really see the shift happen, whether that's weight lifted and people are saying they feel much lighter having been able to talk things through, whether it's coming up with a solution for something that is really taking up headspace for them, or whether it's just that shift in thinking that you just see that light bulb go off in their mind and suddenly all of these possibilities just sit in front of them. And I mean, it's why I love what I do, because I get to see these moments, because I get to be alongside people as they experience these moments. And so this week, the light bulbs I think will resonate with a lot of people listening. And I'm going to jump straight into them because, I mean, firstly, I share what I'm up to in social posts and the newsletter. And also I want to make sure that I give these proper time and talk through them in enough detail to really help you as a listener and as a leader to take something away from this and be able to put it into action to help you on your leadership journey. 2 of the light bulbs this week are from the final call, the final module from the Elevate Your Efficiency Blueprint program. And one is from a one-to-one session. I mean, it's proof, all of them are proof that the work works. And when we do the work, change happens. And when change happens, things change and they change for the better. And it's also proof that the beliefs that we hold really run the show. And when we become aware of those beliefs and when we then challenge ourselves to change those beliefs, it makes such a big difference. And this is why identity is such a big part in the work that I do and why I get clients to really zoom in on it, both one-to-one clients and the clients that are on group programs with me, because it's so important how we see ourselves as an individual, how we see ourselves as a leader. It's fundamental. It's at the core of how we then lead ourselves and how we lead others. So the first light bulb, I mean, I was blown away when they shared this. So this happened on the group call for the Elevate Your Efficiency program. Now, I share upfront that my objective on the program is to help leaders to get their time back. And we do that by becoming more efficient and more effective and working on the team that they lead to help them to be more self-sufficient, to be more confident, to be more resilient. And that's where the time comes back from. Now, for some people, they put that time into making sure they go home on time. And others reinvest that time to work on strategic work, to work on project developments that they don't normally get the time for. So my commitment at the beginning of the program is to save them 5 hours a week. So at least an hour a day. And this week we got to module 8. So it's the 8th week of the program. And the final module, and it's the module where they take everything that they've been learning and they create their own leadership blueprint, something they can take forward, something that they will use long after the program has ended. And while we were discussing this, one of the participants shared that they have saved 8 hours a week. 8 hours. So not just the 5 hours that the objective was to get them back, 8 hours. 8 hours every week. That adds up. 8 hours every week. Maths is not my strong point, but the calculator tells me that's 400 hours a year. So that's 400 hours a year they were doing extra, unpaid. It's also now giving them time back in their contracted working day. So not only are they now going home on time, they also have time within their working day that they can reinvest into what their priority tasks are. And they've checked in again today, and they've implemented another method that we've covered on the program and clawed back even more time. And it's blown my mind, which I know seems a little bit strange because I write the program, I deliver the program, I know it works, and it works for every participant that has done the program and does the work and implements the models, the frameworks, the tools that I teach. I know it works, but it still blows my mind when people get those kind of results, especially when I know what their starting point is and that pressure and the overwhelm and how they feel when they begin on the program. And I'll be totally honest with you, 2 people did not start the program because they said they were too busy, because they said they could not find the time to do the program. And this is the challenge. A lot of people say they don't have time to do the program, but I know that doing the program is the solution for the biggest problem that they have. So this participant shared that this was one thing they did that clawed back this time, that it wasn't just the action that was taken. It was their change in their thought process of why this was important and why they needed to make it happen. It wasn't just the change. And it's so simple. And actually, I have talked about this in previous podcast episodes about that 4 p.m. decision. There's also a video on YouTube. 4 p.m. decision, making that decision 1 hour before your day is due to end over what you are going to spend that time on. So that last hour of the day is intentional and purposeful. Now, what this participant also did, because they needed a cue or a trigger. So if you've read James Clear's Atomic Habits, you'll know he talks about needing a cue or a trigger to activate a new action, to create a new habit. And we can habit stack that onto something that we already do. But in a case like this, where the day just, as happens with a lot of us, the day just really kind of falls away from us and we don't know what time it is, there's no cue, there's no trigger. So what this participant did was set an alarm on their phone. They set an alarm for that 4 p.m. decision point. Before the end of their working day, they set themselves an alarm. They created a shift in the behavior by going off, making a cup of tea, coming back, sitting at the desk. So there was a shift and a change. And the alarm created that trigger for them to take that action. When they then sat back down at the desk, they looked at what they needed to do in that last hour. And then they set a second alarm 5 minutes before they were due to log off. So in that last 5 minutes, again, they forced another intentional decision. I have 5 minutes. What do I need to spend the time on? What absolutely has to be done in the next 5 minutes? If everything else had been done, they would spend 5 minutes setting themselves up for the following day. That is such a simple action to take. And it's something that has given them back 8 hours a week. So they're not now wrapping up half an hour after they already should have left. They're not spending that time frustrated that they didn't do the things that they said they were going to do. They've created a trigger. They've shifted physical state, emotional state. They've sat down, made intentional decisions about where they're going to spend their time. They're more productive, more present rather than what they were experiencing before, where they were late, frustrated and annoyed, and then overwhelmed the following day, knowing that they've got even more to do. So when I talk about things needing to be simple, This is exactly what I mean. We don't need to create big, complicated methods, or we don't need to do anything bigger than it is actually needed. And often, the smaller the action, the more simple the action, and the more specific the action, the bigger the results. Because that alarm is the cue for them to shift into that mindset of, this is now closing the day. How can I be more intentional in this last hour? And this is what I talk about with the AAA time framework. Getting upstream of the problem rather than being caught in it. Understanding, what are your tasks? Your tasks, not everybody else's tasks. Your tasks. What are your tasks that need to be done? How can you show up in your day, plan for your day, be more intentional with your day so that you're not being surprised by it? And as they said, this is about getting ahead for them rather than catching up. And that's the mindset shift, but also that identity shift of, I am someone who shows up with intention. I show up and I plan my day. When I get to the end of the day, I am still planning. I am still intentional. I am still purposeful as to where my energy is going. And I am somebody who goes home on time. I am somebody who leads really well in my contracted hours, and then I get to go home and I get to spend the evening doing what it is that I want to do. I can wrap things up, I can switch off mentally, I can switch off physically, and I can walk away from my working day into my home environment. It is such, let me find the words for this, because 8 hours a week, 400 hours a year. There's ways of looking at that. That's either 400 hours a year that you are not being paid for, or that's 400 hours a year being taken away from your home and family time. However you look at it, that is a lot of time. And the challenge that we have is that it becomes the norm. Finishing an hour late, finishing 90 minutes late, finishing 2 hours late. It's so easy for that to become the norm, and we fall into this default rhythm rather than designing our day, showing up with intention and doing what we need to do, spending our time on those ascend tasks, the ones that we are contracted, responsible and accountable for, the ones that we are paid for, and we get pulled into everything else that is going on. We get pulled into those bad habits that mean we go home late and then we have to work weekends, and it just snowballs very quickly. So I have 2 questions for you to consider. Firstly, do you know where your time needs to be going? Use the free download on the website if you need some help with that. There's a free workbook that will help you to analyze where your time is going and design where you want your time to go. Get clear on that, because if you're not clear on that, there's a strong possibility that your days are happening by default rather than by design. And that then means you're likely to be more reactive rather than intentional. And my second question to you is to think about that 4 p.m. decision point, or that 1 hour before you are due to finish. What can you do to create that cue, create that trigger that forces you to take a different action, forces you to sit down and consider, where's that last 60 minutes of your day going? I said they were juicy ones today. Okay, here we go. Lightbulb 2. Proof that beliefs run the show. I mentioned this at the beginning, and it comes up time and time again because what we believe to be true shapes how we think, how we feel, and how we behave. And when we get negative beliefs, when we get beliefs that hold us back, they can spiral so quickly, so darn quick. And it really can get away with us. And it means we delete, we distort, we generalize to fit this story that we're telling ourselves. And sometimes this story just ain't true. Sometimes it's never been true. And sometimes there was an occasion where it was true, but it's not true anymore. So we really do have to challenge the beliefs that we hold. So this came up with someone this week, and this client is good at their job. They're very values-led, high standards. They care about the people that they are responsible for, both their team and their clients and customers. They care deeply. And what they wanted to talk about was how they give feedback and how they give feedback with their team. Now, this isn't inexperience. This is a very experienced leader. So it's not a lack of skill. It's not a knowledge gap. It's not a skill gap. They've done it well many times before. However, there has been recent occasions where that feedback has not landed well, and it's created additional challenges. But it's also created the challenge where they now have that fear of giving feedback. And they said they feel sick, and not because of the feedback that needs to be given, but because there's part of their brain that is now worried about what will happen when they give that feedback. Their brain has registered that when they give feedback, it goes horribly wrong. They don't listen, they don't make any changes, and they kick back. And so this belief is now running the show. So I asked some questions. Does this happen with everyone when you give feedback? No. Some people take it on board. Some people act on it the first time it's raised. They're encouraged by the feedback. They want to do better. So I asked what's different with the ones where it doesn't land. And ultimately, and this is where the shift started to happen, when it comes to the people who are not receiving that feedback well, it's because they don't want to do what is being asked of them. So it's not that they can't do it. They don't want to. So when they receive that feedback, essentially they're being told to do something that they don't want to do. And so their fight, flight, and freeze response kicks in because they're being held to account. They're being reminded of what they are responsible to do, and they're being called up and to a point being called out because there's not a knowledge gap. There's not a skills gap, and there isn't an action gap because of confidence or capability. There's an action gap because they don't want to do it. So it doesn't matter how this leader gives the feedback. They can use a feedback model. They can do it in the most warm and supportive and friendly way. They could do it over coffee and cake, but ultimately, it is not going to land well with that individual because the issue isn't how the feedback is being delivered. It isn't what the feedback is. It's their willingness and the fact that they don't want to do it. So when feedback doesn't land, sometimes leaders that will reflect on that, which is good. It's good to reflect on why that feedback isn't landing. But sometimes we need to consider that actually for the individual, it's not being received as feedback. It's being held to account, and it's something that they don't want to do. So if your reflection on your delivery, the timing, the tone, the trust, relationship, rapport all lines up, and it's how you would want to deliver that feedback, we need to think about the individual and why that feedback is not landing. Is it a knowledge gap? Is it a skills gap? Is it an action gap? And if it's an action gap, we need to check in as to whether or not that is willingness, because that doesn't make it a you problem as a leader. It makes it a them problem as an individual who's in a role that they have signed terms and conditions for. They have signed up as to what their responsibilities are, and they're not prepared to do what they're being paid to do. And then we have a different challenge because now we have a performance issue, not because they can't, because they won't. This doesn't make the conversation any easier. It may help you to reflect how you want to have that conversation and what course of action you take. Think about feedback conversations that you've perhaps been avoiding and ask yourself, is it the how, or is it because you have a gut feeling that the individual won't want to receive that feedback? Different problems with different solutions, and reflecting on the individual, reflecting on whether this is a knowledge gap, a skills gap, or an action gap will help you to determine how you want to deliver that feedback. And don't forget to make sure it is all documented. When it's feedback, skills, knowledge, or action, whether it's informal or formal, make sure you document that conversation. Okay, Lightbulb 3. Proof that the tools only work if you actually use them. This is another one from the Elevate Your Efficiency program on Wednesday. And it was said it was said tongue in cheek. It's also very, very true. And by their own recognition, at least 2 people in the group on Wednesday said the same thing. We've got it. They've got the tools. Now it's a case of putting them into practice and knowing that the tools are only going to work if you actually use them. So as I mentioned before, we are 8 weeks into the program. So we've got one more call where we wrap everything up, check in on next steps. They'll move from the program into the alumni group to keep the journey going. They'll join other people who have done the program, and we'll go into monthly calls where they can check in, still have that support, still have that accountability to keep things going. But we have covered a lot in those 8 weeks. It's been a lot of content. I have shared a lot of tools that have landed really easily, very quickly, and ones that they've implemented straight away. And then there's others that they looked at, kind of dismissed because it didn't quite resonate with them, or it didn't quite fit in with what they had going on at that time. And that's absolutely fine. That's exactly how the program is designed to work. With every module, I share a variety of frameworks and models because we've got different people, different approaches, different roles, different industries, different pressures, different starting points. So it makes sense that not every framework, not every model is going to be a good fit for everybody. And this is why I always say, take the principle, not the plan. Take out of different models what you need and what would be great for you to implement. And some of those things people have been putting into practice and it's firmly embedded in their day-to-day. They don't even need to think about it anymore. It's just become how they approach things. And in the final model, we put it all together so that they have their own framework, taking all of the tools together to put them into practice longer term. And there is a difference between frameworks that they've learned and understood and the ones that have really absorbed. And we know this because people read self-discovery books, they read self-development books, or they attend workshops, webinars, and some things land really easily, some things don't. So now they have the knowledge, and now we're working on putting that knowledge into practice and adapting existing skills or learning new skills, and then being consistent with those actions. And it was great to hear in the workshop what frameworks people are using on a daily and weekly basis and the impact that has been having. And some of these frameworks, some of these tools, they haven't necessarily happened in the week that we've covered it. It's been implemented along with something else. And that's the difference with intentional leadership. It's not a one-off decision. It's daily practice. It's the way you show up. It's that identity level change of how you see yourself as a leader. And it's the difference between what I call performing leadership and doing what you think you are supposed to be doing or doing what you see other people doing versus doing it your way, adapting things to align with what's important to you, to align with your values, to feel like this is you leading in the way that you feel that you are meant to lead. You don't think your way into doing it, you do your way into it. If that even makes sense. But that's why at the end of the program, people create their own blueprint. Because I can't tell people how to lead. I don't want to tell people how to lead. What I want to do is equip leaders with the tools so that they can lead. They can lead in a way that works for them, in a way that means that they are more effective and more efficient, and also that their teams benefit from that as well. There is a lot there. This may well be a slightly longer podcast than usual, but these light bulbs for me this week are really important, and I didn't want to skip over them for the sake of an extra 5 or 10 minutes. But I want you to think about what your light bulbs have been as I have been talking this through. Is it that you need to put something in place to create that trigger, to take the action that you want to take more consistently? Is there a belief that you know isn't true? A belief that you know if you can challenge and change that things will feel differently and you will show up differently. Or maybe there's a gap between knowing and doing. All of them feed into intentional leadership. It's not just having the knowledge and it's not just having the skills. It's how you take action. How you take action with intention, how you take action with purpose, and how you take action in a way that aligns with what is most important to you. Because that's when success feels as good as it looks. When everything is aligned, when everything is intentional, when everything is purposeful. I would love to know what stood out for you this week. I would love to hear what this has shifted for you and what you plan to do differently. Choose an action, however small, keep it simple, keep it specific. Think about where you can implement this in the next 7 days, and I'll see you next week with another episode. And those are your 3 takeaways for this week. Before you go, ask yourself, what's my light bulb moment from this? And now that I know what I know, what will I do differently? Choose one action, however small, and commit to it. That's how overwhelmed and reactive becomes aligned and intentional. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week on the next episode of The Lightbulb.